This video is on the leadership styles. I use the Hay Group Inventory of Leadership Styles because it's the most succinct and it's used by most researchers of leadership effectiveness. The first one is called Coercive or Directive Leadership Style, and that's a style that is used to gain compliance. It's the most common leadership style used around the world in a private setting, like a family setting, and in organizational societal settings. It's very common because we each learn from each other and we copy each other. And also it requires the fewest number of skills. So all you need to have to be a directive leader is position power or fear of any other sort. So even if you don't have position power, but you have a personality that's strong, or you're used to being directive and telling people what to do, so directive leaders tell people what to do, that's when directive leadership is, or that's why it's used. It's a very easy leadership style to use. You don't need skill, but you do need to maintain fear. It's actually the least effective leadership style of all the ones on the Hay list and all other lists. So basically, that's why we have a lot of problems in organizational settings, because we use directive style, which creates compliance and actually seeks compliance. And then when people see that they don't want really compliance because compliance doesn't lead to creativity and collaboration and engagement, then they say, okay, let's go for engagement. But what really happens is, let's say the people in position power in an organization may use directive leadership style. People comply because they're scared of losing their jobs or scared of being demoted or embarrassed or criticized, so they comply. And then they are not engaged because they're always worrying about complying versus doing their best. Like they start to protect themselves, protect their jobs, protect their image, protect their ideas, protect everything. And then they don't, engage with others, trust others, collaborate, co-create, etc. And so what happens is then people start blaming the people who are disengaged and either get rid of them and bring new ones, or try to solve the engagement through the people, but they don't ever look at which context or leadership style or anything else within the context has created the low engagement or compliance. So it's kind of a backward way. So now that you know about this, and if you see compliance in your context, wonder or question, is there someone being directive here? Is there a directive leadership style in the organization, even if it's not necessarily in this or that team? Okay. Now, coercive or directive leadership style is very effective in a urgent setting like war, or firefighting, or emergency rooms in hospitals, or even hospitals when there's a lot of risk to human safety and human health. It's very effective there, but it's not effective in other contexts. Now, if you notice yourself using the directive style, what you can ask yourself is about your triads. What are you thinking and feeling in order to be directive? What would happen if you started inquiring or collaborating instead of telling people what to do? How would you feel? And usually what happens is people feel insecure or scared if they're not controlling or trying to control the external world by telling people what to do. So they feel like, if I don't take care of it, or if I don't control what happens here, bad things will happen. That's one area that's very common, kind of thought and feeling behind the directive style. Now, the next one is authoritative. So authoritative is really, I would change that. The newest definition they use is visionary. So they use authoritative, meaning there's an authority or some vision there, but authoritative really gets clumped in with directive. So they changed this title to visionary, but I'm using both of their lists because you can find either one on the website. So authoritative for the Hay Group is equal to visionary, meaning you have a long-term vision and you can rally people around that vision. You see it, you know what it is, you keep it alive by talking to people about it, describing what benefits people will get out of it, and then you find ways to rally people toward it so that you're moving toward it. This is a very powerful leadership style, very powerful. And it's people are very attracted to visionaries who have a bigger picture of what is possible. And that is why it's attractive, because it's aspirational. It talks about what we could be, how we could be better, how we could be more motivated, engaged, collaborative, creative, etc. Now, you may meet some people in the organizational setting who are very good at visionary, but they're not good at the practical aspects of it. Like, how do we do it? What's the first step, second, third step to getting to that vision? And so those people in organization settings may get sidetracked, and it may look like, people in the organization are saying we don't like vision, but it's really the people who can't implement the vision or help create a strategy and implementation plan. That's a common disconnect in visionaries. They're not able to figure out how to do it. So this is a downside. If you have both, which is ideal, the visionaries who can maintain a big picture that is better for the greater good and figure out how to take the steps to get there and bring people around that, they're really the most successful in every context across history. Very, very powerful leadership style. Now, if you're already doing that, fantastic. If you'd like to be more visionary, because what I notice in my coaching practice and all the programs I offer is that people are asked, how can you shift from operational to strategic thinking? So that's a very important aspect of kind of becoming promoted or going to a more senior leadership position within an organization, to be able to shift from being operational, meaning look at the tasks, look at everything that needs to be done, to incorporate a vision and then therefore be strategic. So the word strategy is often confused. It's like, what's the strategy of getting things done, implementation plan, or what's the strategy, meaning the vision. So we can use those words in both ways, but when we add vision with a strategy or an implementation plan, it becomes a very powerful leadership style. Now the third is called affiliative. So there's always a person who's seeking out harmony. How do we work well together? Which is a very powerful tool when there's destructive criticism or conflict going on, or there are people in silos that do not communicate. So any environment that is not peaceful and harmonious or collaborative can use the affiliative style to bring people together around what they need to feel good, what they need to do their best within a context, what's needed to achieve the vision or the goals of the organization. And so it's a very powerful style. Now, what could happen, and what I notice, what happens frequently in the Silicon Valley companies, what I've observed in working here in the last years, is that there could be a culture of happiness and being positive and optimistic, and then people start then indirectly, without realizing, start to let's say, put in the corner the idea of being worried or concerns or problems or obstacles. So all these other aspects of what happens within an organizational setting get criminalized or degraded or seen as very negative. And this can create a false harmony. Like, people look like they're happy and positive and peaceful and getting along together, but in fact they're angry because they want to bring up concerns they have about a project, and they're seen or criticized as pessimistic or not a team player or negative or, spoiling the positivity that's going on. And this happens and creates resentment, and it creates anger, and things get very difficult in organizational settings that way. So if you use the affiliative style, be careful. Look at what motivates you. What are you thinking and feeling in order to be affiliative? And then are you taking into consideration anything that happens within a context as part of harmony? So talking about problems could be harmonious if you talk about them in a balanced way and you wonder, what's going on, how can we solve those, versus talking about problems with judgment, criticism, and blame. Those do not promote harmony or peace or collaboration or trust. They promote criticism, judgment, and blame, which is really a negative way of interacting. So just wonder about yourself, and if you see this style, being played out in organizations, notice for yourself, how do you like being part of that? How does that leader, do that, and what results does it bring? Now the next one is called democratic, which is also called participative in their newest leadership style list. And it's really going for consensus, and it's trying to generate new ideas. So it's the goal is to bring people together around a goal, hopefully around a vision, so that people are working together around the same idea, instead of one person perceives it this way or one person interprets it that way, and they're kind of working against each other. So this is very positive as well. It's looking at getting ideas from everyone, right? Making sure everyone is participating, having a voice, being heard, being seen, respected, appreciated. Very powerful leadership style. And what is important is that it doesn't go to groupthink. So the way this participatory or democratic leadership style can go badly is within a general organization of directive leadership style, or any environment, within the legacy industrial model that looks at people as cogs in a wheel. Some people use it either, trying to look democratic within a directive leadership style organization, or they're actually trying to be democratic. And then if they don't, let's say, follow through with democracy, even when things get difficult, it falls apart. What happens most of the time is that people try to be democratic when things are going well. They're able to be open and listen to people, gather information, and everyone feels included and respected and appreciated. But then when that leader gets stressed out or pressured or anxious, they revert to a leadership style that's directive. And then suddenly all that democracy and participatory leadership is out the door. So have you ever heard of someone says, well, when we're not in this crisis, we'll be democratic. Now just do it. We don't have time, right? So this is what happens frequently. Like, people are directive and participatory, and they go back and forth. They toggle back and forth depending on their stress level and their emotional reactions, really. Okay? So it's really interesting. I think you'll be able to observe that within the organizational setting. So if you're doing that, if you notice that in yourself, just wonder, what triggers you to get into a directive leadership style? What brings out your capacity to be a democratic or participatory leader? And then what results, either the ones you dislike or like, come out of each of those? And then how does that affect your credibility and influence if you're toggling between those? It does, and it's a very powerful outcome. So most people distrust leaders who toggle between the directive and participatory leadership styles. It's a very common occurrence in today's world. Now the next leadership style on the list is pace-setting. This is the second most common leadership style used after directive. Okay, so pace setters are also called taskmasters. They care about the task, the assembly line of a project. What do we do first? What do we do second? Have we done them in time, in the level of quality we want, etc.? And so what happens frequently when people focus so much on the task is they forget the bigger picture. They may not know the bigger picture. Okay, so they don't know how the tasks fit into a project, how the project fits into the organizational vision, etc. And so they're often detached from what's going on around them. They're just taskmaster, always, kind of cracking the whip on what needs to get done and why, regardless of the context. So when people use that leadership style, they don't think about, how do people feel? Do they feel safe? Do they feel resourceful? Do they feel respected and appreciated? Do they have all the tools they need to get things done in time? So often people who use that style, they don't think of the bigger picture, even if it's the team picture of what's going on in the broader sense with the people achieving those tasks. And so that creates a lot of problems. So that in a lot of companies that are, technology companies in the Silicon Valley area, engineering companies, anything that's really focused on a lot of tasks to achieve within a project, they get to be taskmasters. They might also be called managers, and you have the other video I made of the distinction between leader and manager. So, someone who's managing a process is also called a pace setter or a taskmaster. And this is when people focus on a project or a task or a timeline versus focusing on the people doing them and how they feel and how they think in order to behave in a resourceful way in order to get those things done. So the leader who's able to humanize the situation is able to use the process to bring out the best in people. So it's not that we throw away the tasks, but we make sure that everyone's needs are met in order to achieve the tasks in the most positive way, most creative, the most beneficial ways. Now, the last one on the list is the coaching leadership style. And this is the more, let's say, new leadership style that has emerged in the last 20 years. And it's really based on the Socratic method of inquiry or asking questions to help people come to their own logical conclusions as to how to solve a problem or create an opportunity. So it's focused on, the Hay Group talks about it as focused on professional growth or personal growth of employees, but you can broaden that to say it's actually a way of interacting with people and a way of using questions to help them come to their own conclusions as to what could happen. So if, for example, someone comes to you with a problem and asks you for ideas, you don't need to have to do anything. You can just ask. For example, you could say, what's the worst that could happen if this occurs? What's the ideal outcome? What are we trying to go toward? Or what are you, if you're talking to someone, what are you trying to go toward? How can we make that happen? How can we transition from where we are, or the worst case, to the best case? What do we need to do? And in having that conversation, a lot of ideas surface. Because what a coach does in a leadership context is they tap into what's best about someone. They don't look at someone who comes to them with a problem as they lack intelligence or they lack a capacity to change something or to fix it or solve a problem. They see them as a person who needs a conversation to tap into their own ability to solve it, or the own team's ability to solve it together through collective intelligence. So it's all about asking questions. What would you like to see happen? What are you concerned? What do you notice? What are you avoiding? What do you think is the problem? What do you notice other people think is the problem? And you ask questions and inquire, and you'll be amazed at how effective this leadership style is. And in essence, when shifting from the outgoing legacy industrial model to the incoming human-centric model, you'll notice that coaching is a very powerful tool in bringing out the best out of an individual or a group of people, and then they feel heard and they feel respected and appreciated. You don't need to have all the solutions. You don't need to tell anyone what to do. You don't need to find it yourself. You can bring it out of others and create positive outcomes together. So from this list, what I encourage you to do is learn what you tend to do. Which of these leadership styles do you tend to use? Do you tend to use one exclusively across all contexts? And what is your triad? What are you thinking and feeling in order to use the same leadership style across contexts? And how does that work for you? Does it bring the results you want? Does it bring different results that you're not really happy with? And then think about, how could you add one, two, or all of these leadership styles to your toolkit? How could you start practicing them so you become flexible to be able to use all of them depending on the context, right? So another piece of reading that I've put on the syllabus, or the syllabus rather, is the situational leadership ideology of Ken Blanchard. He's really getting to the same thing of, depending on the context or the situation, you'll need a different style or set of styles. So imagine the visionary leadership style used with democracy, the democratic or participatory style, to make sure everyone knows, like we have a consensus around what vision is good and ideas about how to actually get there. So you use either a conglomeration of them, or you use a specific style within a specific context or situation within the organization or society. And then you're more effective. You're more able to respond to what's happening there instead of using the same style regardless of the context. Now, the engagement issue we talked about is really a function of this. I'll tell you what happens. We use a directive leadership style because we've learned that leaders have position power, prestige and money or resources, and they have access to those, and they use those for the benefit of everyone, and they know what to do. And because of the information glut or the expansion of knowledge and information, no one person can know what to do anymore, especially amidst a context where all the structures like organizational life or societal life, family, government, all these structures used to be rather solid and they functioned well. But now they don't work anymore because of the diversity, because of the different consciousness in the workforce. We want different things. We respect different things. And because of the fact that we use a directive leadership style for so long, it has really kind of squeezed out creativity, innovation, diversity. And so all those ideas weren't coming up to the top. And so over time, we have a lot of people in position power who solely use the directive leadership style and create fear within organizations for compliance. And so as we talked about, when people fear for their jobs or fear being criticized or humiliated or embarrassed, then they behave in certain ways which are protective ways. Let me protect my job or my name or my idea or my budget, right? And then this does not lend itself to collaboration and creation, because when you're protecting, you're not in a creative mode, you're in a protective mode. You have to be safe and calm and respected and appreciated to be creative and collaborative and trusting. So notice in your context, in your mind, which leadership style do you tend to use? In your family, in your organizational setting, in your team or organization, what leadership style tends to be used over and over? Is it true that there are many styles? How are people playing this out, and how can you start practicing how to use all of the styles in order to expand your capacity to influence and to bring people together around a meaningful goal and vision?